Guardian Druids are shape-shifting, leather-wearing tanks that are formidable with their plethora of defensives and mitigation abilities. I'm going to show you how to play them in Season 4 of Dragonflight in a beginner-friendly and digestible manner with no information overload. Starting off with the stat priority, always try and prioritise getting higher and higher eye-level gear over the secondary stats that you're picking. This will give you a higher level of agility, which is our primary stat. After that, this is the general priority on secondary stats that I do recommend. However, it's not one size fits all, and you should be simulating your character if you're really not sure. If you don't know how to do that, join our Discord and someone will help you. I do actually have written guides on my Patreon as well. So the first one we're going to want is versatility. This is going to increase our damage done and also slightly increase our healing done and also any absorbs and shields that we actually put up on ourselves. And this scales really well with Guardian Druids. Then we have haste. This is actually going to increase how fast we attack. It's also going to increase our rage regeneration, our major resource as a Guardian Druid, as well as increasing how quickly some of our damage is going to be dealt, and also how quickly they come off cooldown. Our mastery as a Guardian Druid is quite simple. It's going to increase our health and our healing received, and of course critical strike, giving us a higher chance to do more damage. For the talents, this on the left-hand side is for raiding and single target. The one on the right-hand side is for Mythic Plus and AoE. There's not really many changes between these, but I will go through them in the rotation part. To actually get these talent trees into your game, I have put links in the description, which is the import strings, and you simply come into your talent tree, press import, paste it in here, and then give it whatever name you like. Now, we are going to be starting off with single target and raiding here, and before we talk about it, I just want to show you my UI and a few things on here. Notably, my UI is very different to the standard one. I've custom built it using an add-on called ElvUI predominantly, and a few other add-ons as well, like Voodoo and Details. If you would like to get this UI, again, you can join my Patreon in the description. It of course helps support the channel. I actually have a lot of written guides on there, like how to analyze and log the combat of your character, how to simulate the gear on your character, amongst other things, as well as some keybind spreadsheets and other resources, one of those being getting to import my UI, of course, as well as getting a VIP channel in the Discord where you can ask questions in. Another thing on my UI is this weak aura in the middle. This is by Avfnar, and again, I'll put a link in the description for that one. You can also use the Luxfos one as well. They're very similar. If you don't know what weak aura is, this is an add-on that can do many things, and you can import specific ones, and this is the one here that I'm using. What it does is it's just going to show all of our cooldowns, buffs, and resources all in one singular place. You can see here my rage and any buffs I'm getting are actually coming up on that weak aura for me, so I'm not looking all over the screen. Guardian Druid is one of the simplest tanks you can play, and I've split the abilities here into a few different parts. We have the cooldowns, things that we should be keeping up at all times, resource spenders, and filler. Then we're going to go on to the utilities, etc. So first of all, we've got Rage of the Sleeper on a 1-minute cooldown. Unleash the Rage of Ursoc for 10 seconds, preventing 25% of all damage you take, increasing your damage done, and granting you 25% leech, and reflecting damage back at our attacker. And we are going to be wanting to use that cooldown, as well as our others, on cooldown. We also have Heart of the Wild on a 5-minute cooldown. Abilities not associated with your specialization are substantially empowered for 45 seconds. Cast time of balance spells reduced and their damage is increased. Things like Moonfire, for example. Feral, we're going to gain 1 combo point every 2 seconds while in cat form, and physical damage is increased. And Restoration, any healing spells are going to be increased and the mana cost of them reduced. Then we have Incarnation, Guardian of Ursoc, an improved bear form that grants the benefits of Berserk, causes Mangle to hit up to 3 targets, and increases our maximum health. That's going to enhance some of our other abilities. Lasts 30 seconds, and you may shapeshift in and out of this improved bear form for its duration. Again, we're going to use all 3 of these on cooldown as a beginner. The next thing we have here is some other abilities. We've got Moonfire. You can see here quick beam of lunar light that's going to burn the enemy for an amount of arcane damage and an additional amount over a period of time. Keep this up on your target or targets at all times at 100% uptime. Then we have Thrash and Mangle, both on a 5-second cooldown. Fresh then strikes all nearby enemies, dealing bleed damage, an additional amount of bleed damage over 11 seconds. When applied from bear form, it can stack up to 5 times. And this is going to generate some rage, our major resource. So use that on cooldown. We also have Mangle. Mangling the target deals 20% additional damage against bleeding targets, and therefore targets of your Thrash will be taking increased damage from your Mangle. Use both of these, as I said, on cooldown. Now, we've been generating all of this rage with these two abilities, but how are we going to spend that rage? Well, we have Iron Fur on a 0.5 second cooldown, increases our armor for 7 seconds. Now, this actually can also stack, by the way. But when I say stack, really, it's more of an overlap. So, in other words, if you already have one stack of it, and that's up for the next 3 seconds still, and then you put on another stack, then the old one will fall off, and then the new one will still be on for a few seconds. So they kind of stagger on top of each other rather than refreshing the duration forever of Iron Fur. Hopefully that makes sense, but TLDR, you should be using this as a rage spender when you need to be using a defensive ability. So this is our defensive rage spender, whereas Maul is going to be our offensive rage spender. Maul the target for an amount of damage. And then lastly, we have Swipe. If we've got nothing else to press, this is what we can use. Swipe all nearby enemies, inflicting damage, deals reduced damage beyond 5 targets. While we've been talking about that, you may have been seeing some of our abilities lighting up here. And these are a few different procs that can actually happen when we're doing our rotation. The first one here being our Moonfire proc. And you will see a little moon icon sort of coming up on your UI here when this happens. And this is from this talent here, Galactic Guardian. Your damage has a 5% chance to trigger a free automatic Moonfire on the target. When this occurs, your next Moonfire you cast generates 8 rage and deals 300% increased direct damage. So when you do see that light up, make sure you are using that Moonfire, as we can see here. The next one you may see is on your Mangle here, and that is this one here, Gore. Thrash, Swipe, Moonfire, and Maul, so pretty much all your other abilities, have a 15% chance to reset the cooldown on Mangle and to cause it to generate an additional 4 rage. And that is the Gore proc on your Mangle. There's a few different things that are going to affect our Maul here as well, as you can see. Notably these two talents, Vicious Cycle. Mangle increases the damage of your next Maul, and casting Maul increases the damage of your next Mangle by 15%, and that can stack up to 3 times. So Mangle and Maul here do have a slightly symbiotic relationship to each other with the buffs they provide. Now, if you're starting to think, oh, this is getting a bit confusing, don't worry, because if you just follow the priority that I told you, with using these on cooldown, using these as your spender, etc., then and using them when they proc as well, it's pretty much going to do half of that thinking for you, as long as you follow those core principles. Especially as a beginner, I think it's best to learn things in a building block style, and then kind of bringing it all together once you understand more. We've also got Tooth and Claw here. Auto attacks have a 20% chance to empower your next Maul, stacking up to 2 times. An empowered cast of Maul deals 40% increased damage, costs 100% less rage, and reduces the target's damage that they do to you for 6 seconds. So when you see that come up, do your Maul. There's also things like Rend and Tear. Each stack of Thrash reduces the target's damage to you by 2% and increases your damage done to them by 2%. Moonless Night as well, another benefit of keeping up Moonfire at all times. Your direct damage melee abilities against enemies affected by Moonfire cause them to burn for an additional amount of arcane damage. So again, it's really important that we keep Moonfire up at all times. And one last one I'm going to talk about is Gory Fur. Mangle has a 15% chance to reduce the rage cost of your next Iron Fur by 25%. Now, if you do install the weak aura that I've shown here, you will actually get all of these on that weak aura, so you can see what's going on. Otherwise, of course, these are on your buff bar. Now, apart from all of that, we do have some other utilities and cooldowns I'd like to talk to you about. Namely, we've got 4 here, which are more utilities, and these are more defensive cooldowns over here. So we've got Frenzied Regeneration, costing 10 rage, heals you for 32% of health over 3 seconds and increases healing received on 2 charges. You can use this pretty often. As you can see, it's on a 30-second recharge and can be used twice, and it's quite cheap. We have Skull Bash. You charge and bash the target's skull, interrupting spell casting and preventing any spell in that skull from being cast. That is your interrupt or kick, and that is how we're going to interrupt the target's spell casting. This is really, really important. We've got our growl, which is going to taunt the target, meaning that the target is forced to attack you. In other words, if it's accidentally gone onto somebody else, then this is going to bring it back to you. And then Wild Charge, charging an enemy, immobilizing them for 4 seconds, and that's on a 15-second cooldown as well. Moving on to the defensives over here, we've got Bark Skin. Your skin becomes tough as bark, reducing all damage you take by 20%, increasing healing received by 20%, and preventing damage from delaying your spellcasts. You can use this when you are stunned, frozen, etc, 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 and it is available in all different shapeshift forms. Then we've got Survival Instincts. This is on a much longer cooldown of 2 minutes. Reduces all damage you take by 50% for 6 seconds. And lastly, Renewal. One of my favourite ones. It's very simple. Instantly healing you for 30% of health, usable in all shapeshift forms. And that's pretty much it for single target. Now, again, if you are finding it confusing or you think that it isn't as simple as it first looks, which is true, what I advise is maybe set your bars up like mine here so that you're like, right, I've got my cooldowns. I'm using these, on cooldown and keeping them up at all times. These are my spenders. This is my filler spell. Here's my defensive cooldowns. Here's my utilities. And it kind of just segments them in your brain rather than one big slop of abilities all smushed up together in the action bar where it can be a lot more confusing. And I personally find that is a better way when I'm learning a new spec and kind of just doing it like, building blocks. There are some other utilities, etc. in your spellbook and talents, of course, and I do recommend that once you're more comfortable with the spec and you've had a lot of practice with it, that you do go through and look how they all synergize together. But the ones I've spoken about today are the really important ones that you need to know about to get the kind of foundation of the rotation. Now, let's have a look at what we're going to change for Mythic Plus. TLDR, it's not much, okay? As you may have seen, Thrash, for example, strikes all nearby enemies. Swipe is going to strike all nearby enemies. We're really not going to change much for the Mythic Plus rotation and AoE rotation. If I actually swap over into it, you can see the talents that are changing. And the main one that I want to speak about is this one here, Raise. It costs 40 rage, strike the target with the Might of Ursoc, dealing damage to all enemies in front of you. Basically, what we're going to do is just change over our Maul here for Raise. So remember I said that this is your offensive rage spender. Well, Maul is for single target, Raise is for multi-target. And that's really all we're going to change for that rotation in AoE. You remember that things like Tooth and Claw said Maul or Raise, etc. Any talents that affect Maul are generally going to affect Raise. And you may remember when I was talking about them, I didn't mention Raise. Well, that's why, because we were only using Maul at that point for single target, and now we're using Raise for AoE. And I think that's the best way of keeping it simple as a beginner. The only other thing that's changed is this one, Dream of Cenarius. When you take non-periodic damage, you have a chance equal to your critical strike to cause your next regrowth or to heal for an additional 200% and be instant free and castable in all forms. This is regrowth here. It's a single target healing spell that has a heal over time after it heals as well. So when that lights up, in Mythic Plus, you can use that on yourself and use it in all forms. So you can use it in bear form and it'll be instant and free. So that's an extra little heal that you are going to get in the AoE Mythic Plus build as well. So just be aware of that. You should probably put that on your bars or have it on like Voodoo or something like that. That's like a healing add-on. If you don't know how the hell to do any of those, join my Discord or my Patreon and I or someone else will help you. And again, if you do need any extra help or you are confused about the rotation or you want help on any other specs, etc., we have a really great community in the Discord. I'm always there, especially in the Patreon channel, helping out members where possible. And if you are looking for other specializations, whether that's Druid or another class in Season 4 of Dragonflight, click this playlist that's about to appear here, and I have all of them ready and waiting for you, as well as PvP and dungeon guides, etc. for Season 4. So good luck and have fun. It's a really, really fun tank, and it's one of my favourites.